Hi, I'm Paul Guppy. I'm Vice President for the Washington Policy Center, and this is our regular update of what's going on with the Policy Center, what the top issues are that we're working on. I'll give a quick update about those and then look forward to events that we have coming up in July and then in the rest of the year. So to start this off, we have had a really fun back and forth with Governor Jay Inslee regarding the real cost of his new carbon tax that he imposed. It took him several legislative sessions to get this passed. We were actually, I'm proud to say, instrumental in defeating this tax in the past. But in last year, he ended up running this through and it went into effect this year. And Todd Myers, the environmental expert on our staff, using Department of Energy data, using the state's own information, did a calculation as to how much the Inslee carbon energy tax would cost regarding the cost of a gallon of gasoline. So the mechanism of the way this cap and trade system works, Inslee got the model from California, is the government tells manufacturers and producers how much carbon they can emit. There's an auction. The petroleum companies and the other manufacturers, private companies, they bid on getting these carbon emission credits. And depending on how that bidding comes out, that cost is built into the products that they have. So it's an indirect kind of tax based on this artificial market that the government has created. What nobody knows is exactly how much is this going to cost. The dispute we had with the governor is he claims that his carbon tax would add pennies to the cost of a gallon of gas. Todd Myers, again, using numbers that come from the government and the Department of Energy's own data, calculated that that would be more like 46 cents a gallon. The first auction was held earlier this year, so the price is now known, and it turns out to be 45 cents a gallon. So Todd was right, the governor was wrong. Todd contacts the governor's office to notify them of that, and of course they deny it. So they continue to deny that this is adding significantly to the cost of gasoline because of the governor's policies. They point to everything else. They can't get around the fact that Washington State is now #1 in the nation for having the most expensive gasoline at the pump. What Inslee does is he points to what he calls oil company greed. He says those greedy capitalists in the petroleum industry are jacking up the price of gasoline. To us, as a free market organization, our research can show immediately that that is not the case. This is a very competitive market. And as Todd points out, well, if that's the case, then why is a gallon of gas $1 cheaper in Idaho than it is in Washington? I guess oil company greed only applies to our particular state. So clearly the governor is wrong about this. He continues to deny that his energy taxes increase costs that much. But again, one thing we point out is that supporters of this tax say that including the governor himself, say that, well, the purpose of a carbon tax is to raise the cost of expending energy. It is supposed to drive conservation and moving to renewable sources. So he's trying to get two things at once: raise about $850 million in revenue, which is what the new tax has brought in, while at the same time saying, no, it's oil companies that are raising the price. The last thing that Todd points out in his numbers is if you take the state gas tax plus the new I'll give you the numbers. The state gas tax is a little over 49 cents a gallon. The new Inslee carbon tax works out to be a little more than 44 cents a gallon. You add those together and the state is taxing 93 cents on every gallon of gas that's sold, while at the same time, our chief executive is denying that his policy has that effect. So that's been a good exercise. We posted all that information on our website. The next issue I'll move on to is our education expert Leave is looking at the latest information regarding a national assessment of educational progress scores. This is what she refers to as the gold standard of student testing to assess how students in different states are progressing in math, reading, science, and achieving learning standards. She's found that Washington State is lagging behind. Test scores have dropped precipitously, particularly since our schools were closed over a year and a half during COVID. But she's done an interesting comparison. Her analysis shows that states that have school choice have higher test scores for all students. Whether those students go to a private school, a public school, a charter school, educated online, it turns out that a range of options that are available end up benefiting all students with higher levels of learning and better test scores. And she has the data to show that. That makes sense to us, again, because of the United States being a laboratory of states. Leave has pointed out that just this year, 7 states have moved to universal school choice. And this is a bipartisan effort. The governor of Pennsylvania, a Democrat, just came out and announced his proposal for school choice in that state. So when we see that trend happening, more than 4 million students across the state now live in states with school choice. And from a research perspective, that allows us to compare the traditional monopoly system like Washington has, and then these new innovative choice systems that are happening in other states. It's turning out to be very positive for students in those other states. We like to point out that Washington calls itself a, quote, progressive state, but when it comes to education, it's actually regressive. Other states are making more progress than we are. At the same time, when you just ask the residents of Washington, should there be more options open and available for education, 68% of Washington residents say yes. When you narrow that down to respondents who have children, asking parents, that rises to 78%. So school choice is popular, it's bipartisan, it's working in other states. We think it's only a matter of time before things begin to crack here in Washington and the popular demand will begin to push for school choice here as well. We think that's a good idea. We're also making progress already on charter schools. So those are showing how innovation can improve education for students. The third issue I want to touch on is something we've written about for a long time, the coming long-term care payroll tax that Elizabeth Hovde on our staff, she is the leading independent expert on this issue and reports on it regularly. Her latest blog post on our site is noting that July 1st is the starting date of this new tax. The Democrats got very nervous around election time a few years ago, 2 years ago, and they delayed the tax for a year and a half. Our calculations show that that saved the people of our state $22 million, just the straight delay. Most of that benefit went to working people. The Democrats have pushed forward. However, they say that they're not going to repeal this plan, and it will kick in on July 1. This is a hefty tax. It's 50 cents on every $100 that a person earns with no income tax. So we're waiting to see what the sticker shock is going to be. One interesting element is that payday for state workers is July 10th. And so we're wondering what the thousands of state workers who work for Governor Inslee are going to think when this new tax goes into effect. The other thing that Elizabeth points out is that the benefits from the long-term care plan are pretty minimal. They're only $36,500 for a lifetime benefit. As anyone knows who's gotten nursing home care or in-home care, that amount of money is not only going to last a few months for an elderly person who needs help. Also, the millions of people who will be paying into this fund are very unlikely to receive anything at the back end. If you move out of the state, if you retire someplace else, you receive zero benefits. As Elizabeth points out, if this plan were offered by a private insurance company, they would be prosecuted for insurance fraud. So we think this is a fraud on the public. No other state has attempted a plan like this. It's already underfunded if you just look at the dollars, but we will see how it plays out. And we're hoping that the legislature reviews this after it's been in place for 6 months. And getting into next year, lawmakers may revisit it and realize what a bad idea it is. We will stay on top of it. Another event that happened here just recently is that U.S. Congress, House of Representatives Natural Resources Committee held a hearing in the Tri-Cities area, a field hearing about the Snake River dams. Todd Myers on our staff testified there. And what he points out is that salmon numbers are recovering, that there's no need to destroy the 4 dams to recover fish populations. That's going very well. Todd also pointed out data on rivers in Western Washington that have no dams at all, that also have lower fish populations. So our point is the science shows that it's not the dams themselves that are affecting fish returns. It's ocean conditions, it's other factors that are involved. And salmon recovery has actually been going very well, according to the numbers that Todd has looked at. But on a practical basis, what Todd pointed out is that it doesn't make any sense to spend $35 billion to tear down these 4 dams, which is what it would cost, and actually have nothing to replace them, because the energy and the agriculture and irrigation and transportation are still needed. We would lose all of that. I don't know of any society that is trying to go backwards by destroying its own infrastructure. And that turns out that what this is. So one thing we note is that with proud Western states like Washington, our tradition is that we used to build things. We used to improve the economy of our area, improve productivity by building things like the Snake River dams and other infrastructure. The radical left-wing environmental movement seems determined to harm communities in Eastern Washington. They don't care about the lost energy or the higher utility costs that everyone would pay. But what's most disturbing is their destructive attitude about what we have built up over many, many decades. They want to tear all that down, and they really don't have anything practical to replace it. So we'll stay on top of that issue as well. So those are the things that we're working on. We're looking forward to having a great summer. We hope you do too. We have some events coming up. We have a lunch in Bellingham on July 12th. Those in the area are invited to come to that. We're doing an online event on July 17th with a group called League of Their Own. It's about women who are interested in running for public office and want to learn about issues. So we'll be doing that event. And then we have our Coeur d'Alene weekend coming up on July 21st with our best supporters and people who want to get more involved. And then our fall dinners are coming up in September and October. September in Spokane, October in Bellevue, and that will be exciting as well. And with that, I want to wish America a happy birthday and wish everybody a great 4th of July weekend.